You're listening to the Wonderfully Bookish podcast, where we talk about all things bookish and wonderful. You can find the notes for this episode and all of the others at wonderfullybookish.co.uk/podcast. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Wonderfully Bookish podcast. I'm Charlotte, your host. I'm a massive bookworm and a film nerd, and I love to get my thoughts out about them on my blog and on this podcast. So I hope you enjoy listening to my bookish rambles and chats with some great people. In this episode, I spoke to my first blogger of the series, which is exciting. I spoke to Elle Crook, who is a writer, a photographer, and sometimes a YouTuber for FoxyTravelsUK. She charts her adventures around New Zealand and Australia, and I'm so jealous, I wish I could go with her. She mostly focuses on female solo travel tips, adventures, and activities that won't break the bank. And, of course, she's an avid bookworm. We spoke about our favourite film and TV adaptations in this discussion, especially ones adapted from young adult books. And later on in the chat, we got a little bit nostalgic in a discussion about our favourite books from our childhood. So I hope you enjoy it, and as usual, all the links and the information for this episode will be in the show notes. So without further ado, here's Elle Crook.
It's wonderfully bookish, whoa. All things books, let's start the show. Everything from classics to contemporary. Come and chat about books with me. If you're a reader of YA, grab a cuppa and just press play.
Hi.
Hello.
Do you just want to quickly introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Elle Crook. I run the blog FoxyTravelsUK and all its affiliate social medias. I am normally a travel blogger, but I am an utter bookworm. So I felt that talking books with someone who's also a bookworm might be a fun thing to do on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely.
Cool. What books are your favourite? Just so we can get to grips with what you like to read.
Oh, I'm very much sort of growing up very much along sort of the fantasy novels. So Harry Potter was a must growing up, Lord of the Rings,
yeah,
everything like that. And then as I got older, it was more sort of transitioning into fantasy YA novels. So the likes of the Mortal Instruments series, dystopian in terms of Hunger Games, and yeah, it just sort of grew from there. I'm trying to expand the range a little bit, but that's predominantly
so am I.
It's predominantly what I've been reading so far. But hoping to broaden the old horizons eventually this year.
Yes, me too. I've always said that I've never liked fantasy.
Oh yeah.
But then when I think about all the books I used to read, like I've always loved like dystopian, and I never really consider dystopian as fantasy.
It's odd, isn't it?
But I guess it kind of is. It has.
I
don't know. It's weird.
It has the elements of fantasy in terms of like, even though it's like a future version of our world, essentially, it has sort of those elements of what can be found in a fantasy without necessarily including, vampires or elves or anything like that. But it's definitely got that mystical element to them.
I always consider, and I don't know if I'm right here, but I always consider fantasy to be more kind of, I don't know the right word, not old-fashioned, but almost like with elements of like historical.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
It's hard. It's hard to explain. Whereas dystopian is kind of future.
Yeah, no, that's a good point actually, because well, I suppose a lot of sort of what you class as your typical fantasy, or certainly the classic fantasy books, are rooted from like all the way back from Victorian times. I mean, if you're thinking Lord of the Rings, that's definitely got Victorian elements in it, or even, I don't know if it is classed as fantasy, but Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe. That's definitely, they're all like C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien. We're talking like nearly, 80, 90 years ago? Probably not quite that far back, but yeah, I can see where they're definitely rooted in history and where they've got historical elements in them.
Yeah, but then something like Harry Potter is also fantasy,
And it's very modern
but
age.
it's more contemporary. So it's
No,
it's fantasy is just one of those genres that is just the weirdest to kind of pin down what it actually is.
exactly. But then I suppose, yeah, it's had its basis in a historical way, and I suppose even with J.K. Rowling, even though it is set in modern society, the actual
Yeah.
witches and wizards are definitely not 100% caught up in modern society. Do you know what I mean?
True.
Like,
Yeah.
Arthur Weasley, for example, all those questions he asked Harry about sort of like cars and modern age technology
and like his obsession with plugs.
Exactly. It's like, so there's definitely sort of like a gap between modern age muggles and modern age wizards. It's like, how have they not caught up with technology? Are they that based in sort of like past history that they've relied on their magic for so long that stuff like Wi-Fi and plugs is a completely new concept to them? But they're okay having cars apparently. But plugs, one step too far.
Oh, I've never thought about that actually. The fact they have a car. I mean, okay, it's a flying car, but it's still a car.
Essentially, it's a car, but plugs.
But
nah,
electricity isn't a thing.
No, not at all. Still working with candles. Why fix something that isn't broken?
Exactly. If you could only pick 3 books to read for the rest of your life, like you can read them as many times as you want, but you can only pick 3 to read, which ones would you choose?
No, don't do this to me. Why would you do this? Is it like singular books, or can I cheat and do series?
You can pick. I said when I interviewed Kemi Dawn Bowman the other day, she chose Saga, the graphic novel series, and there's like a million of them, and I told her that we can just pretend that they're in one massive anthology and then it can be one book. So I'm kind of bending the rules a little bit. I'm not going to be completely evil.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just pretend they're in one huge anthology and then you can pick a series.
Okay, brilliant. So the first one obviously is Harry Potter. It's just one giant Harry Potter book and it has all the stories in it. The original Lord of the Rings trilogy, that's got to be one anthology. And I'd probably say all the Sherlock Holmes books, or sort of like novellas or whatever they are, if they were all clubbed together in one, all the Arthur Conan Doyles.
I feel like you can probably already get them as one massive anthology, to be honest.
I wouldn't be surprised. If you can get a box set of all the Avengers, then you can get a book of all the Arthur Conan Doyles. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so those would be my 3.
Nice.
Yes. Bit of fantasy, bit of detective work. Keep me interested for years to come.
Yeah, a nice range.
Nice range.
I don't know what I would pick. I still don't know. I've been trying to think about this, and like when I record, I sit right next to my bookshelf, and I'm just staring at my shelf trying to decide what I would pick, and I'm still clueless.
No.
I don't know.
But I suppose it changes on a daily basis depending on what your mood's like, because sometimes you're in the mood for one type of book, and then the next day you're like, oh no, actually I'd want this type of book. So I can see what the dilemma comes in. So say if you were to choose today, then what would be your 3?
Well, one I would always pick, no matter what day it is Challenger Deep by Neil Shusterman.
Oh, okay.
Because it's just my favourite book ever. People are probably sick of me talking about it, because every time, like on Twitter, every time someone says, does anyone have any book recommendations or audiobook recommendations, I always dive on it, like, Challenger Deep. You need to read this book.
Everyone
just please
needs to read it.
It's incredible. Like, I listened to that as an audiobook first, and the audiobook was amazing. And then I got the book for Christmas one year because I just didn't shut up about it. So I would definitely pick that one no matter what day.
Yeah. You're looking at your bookcase now, aren't you?
I am. I'd probably also join you with the massive Harry Potter book.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the size of the Harry Potter books now on my shelf with them all lined up, and that would be a massive book.
One very thick book.
Yeah. I remember researching a while ago how many pages there are in total in all of the books.
Oh no.
Hang on, I'm going to try and look it up right now.
And bearing in mind, this is not including like Quidditch Through the Ages or Fantastic Beasts or anything like that.
I just Googled how many pages in, and it comes up with all of the Harry Potter books.
So you're not the first one to think about it.
Okay, the total number. Do you want to guess the total number of pages in all of the books?
Oh, God. Okay. Let's go with 2,000. 2,000 pages.
It's actually 4,200.
No.
I don't know what that's including, but the number that this is from Scholastic. Scholastic have said that the number is 4,000 pages.
Oh my word!
So how true that is, I do not know. But
oh my word! And to think, like, especially, I don't know about you, but having reread all the series so many times since they first came out, I think how many times you've read through about 4,000 pages worth of books of one series.
Yeah, and then leaving the rest of the unread books just unread. But reading the same ones. I'm so bad at that though. I reread so many books.
Because you know you like them, that's why.
I know, and I have so many books on my shelf and on my Kindle and everything, and on Audible. There's just books in everywhere that are completely untouched. Yet I just reread the same ones.
I think it's that sort of like, because I'm a sucker for that as well. I'll buy books at the drop of a hat, but they'll sit on my bookshelf for years and years and years until I eventually go, I haven't read that yet.
Yeah.
And I do think it's sort of a fear of, especially if it's a book that you've heard a lot about.
Yes.
There's a fear of reading it and getting, I don't know, maybe part of the way through and going, actually, I really don't enjoy this. And then you're sitting there going, I've spent money on this book and so many people have said they love this book.
Yeah, especially as a blogger, like you're so kind of influenced by other bloggers. And like most of the people I follow on Twitter are other book bloggers.
Yeah.
So I see people talking about books so much. So I think the majority of the books on my bookshelf are ones that have been recommended.
Yeah.
So, and I've got things like Children of Blood and Bone, where it's like so hyped.
Yes.
But I'm just so scared to read it in case, because obviously it's fantasy.
Yeah.
And fantasy isn't a big thing for me.
No.
So I'm kind of, it's still just unread because I'm just a bit daunted by it.
Daunted and an aspect of scared that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I get you. I totally get you. It's a bit like me, and for me it's thrillers. You know, like detective thrillers or psychological thrillers or anything like that. Like Gone Girl and The Girl on the Train and those types of books.
Yeah.
People haven't stopped talking about them for, I swear, it's been, 2 years now? And I've seen Gone Girl, the movie. It was a brilliant movie. I thought it was incredible. But actually reading the book scares me half to death because everyone I've talked to has said they're amazing. And it's like, but what if I don't like it?
Yeah, I went through a phase probably last year of being obsessed with thrillers and like crime thrillers.
Yeah.
And they were all I would accept to review on my blog as well. I'd get so many emails with people asking me to review crime thrillers. And I think I just read them to death.
Yeah.
And I've still got so many now on my shelf that I've still got from that phase that I haven't got round to reading it.
Yeah.
But I kind of I read so many that there were only a certain number of plots. And after a while, there are only so many thrillers, like crime thrillers and mysteries and things that are still a surprise to you. I read so many that I just thought, yeah, I know. I kind of guessed that. I called that.
See, that's my one fit. And it's the same with movies and TV as well. It's getting halfway through a book or something and being able to guess the ending. And it's like, well, what's the point of reading it? I've just guessed how this finishes. Bye, book. And I hate that. It's anything that can give you the element of surprise in this day and age, which, you know, you can get a spoiler at the drop of a hat. Yeah, it's still astounding to me if you read through and go, oh my word, this is not what I expected.
Yeah.
But that's so cool that even in that genre, which is huge now, you can still get surprised.
Yeah. I think I've read so many twists. Like, I love books that have massive twists.
Yes, definitely.
But I feel like I've read so many now that I'm starting to be able to guess things. So when, like, at the moment, I'm watching Jane the Virgin on Netflix.
Great show.
Yes.
Yes.
I think I'm coming towards the end of the first season. I
Yeah.
think I'm probably on like episode 17 of the first
Ooh,
season.
okay.
And I don't want to say too much because obviously people might be listening who don't want to know spoilers.
Spoiler
but-
alert for anyone who hasn't watched it.
Yes.
Close your ears.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's just been a big twist
Yeah.
at the end of the series, like in the episode I just watched.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this whole twist with like the really big dramatic build up. But as soon as this person appeared, like 5 episodes ago,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I bet they're going to be this person.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I know which twist you're talking about.
A twist now needs to be massive for it to still shock me.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. All I will say is keep watching, because where
Right.
Jane the Virgin is based very much on like Spanish novellas,
Yeah.
they can be a little more dramatic and a little more out there with their storylines. So I'd say, even though you might have guessed it, keep watching, because I think it'll still surprise you.
Right. Okay.
Go with it, certainly.
Yeah, I wasn't that into it in
Yeah.
the beginning. I was just kind of like, it's all right. It seemed a bit kind of teeny. I don't really know how to explain it. It was the same as when I watched Pretty Little Liars ages ago.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was the same with that at the beginning. I was like, oh, it's so cheesy and it's a bit too teen cheese for me. And I was almost like that with Jane the Virgin, but as I kind of watch more, I'm now obsessed with it and I can't stop watching it.
I
So
know.
Yeah.
It's just so it's very different from anything else that's out there. And again, it may be because it's based on Spanish novellas, which are essentially like EastEnders but souped up and not quite sad.
Yeah.
But no, I can see where you're coming from with the teen drama, because especially with sort of like your typical 3-way love triangle and everyone's sort of integrated and everything like that. I can see where you would have come with that, but it's definitely more than that.
Yeah. I'm the same with books as well though. Like there's so many books that are young adult, but they're kind of I feel like they're aimed at the bottom end of young adult rather than the top end. And people still love them, and I've read some of them and I still love them.
Yes.
But I read them sometimes like, am I too old for this?
You're
am
never
I already
too old.
too old?
You're never too old for young adult fiction.
No. So I need to give them a go more, because I know I always enjoy them.
And it's such a vast genre, even though it's like young adult. It's more the umbrella term young adult. Like you can have fantasy young adult and dystopian young adult and sort of more
it's why it's so frustrating when people say that young adult is a genre.
It's like it's not. It's
and
an umbrella term.
It's not. It's like it's an age demographic.
It's a bit like it's below women's fiction but above teen fiction.
Yeah,
it's that gap that sort of no one really realised was a gap in the marketplace until they started filling it, and they were like, oh, hang on a second. This is great for 16 to sort of like mid-20s. Perfect little pocket, and it's done really well. Sort of, I don't know about you, but especially since I've been growing up, when I hit sort of the tail end of high school and was a bit too old for the teen fiction.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect market though, and it's had some great success, not just in books, but sort of from books into movies or books into TV shows. It's definitely had its growth spurt.
It's like I don't know if you've seen it, but I watched To All the Boys I've Loved Before recently.
Oh, that's on my watch list. I need to watch it. Is it really good?
I haven't read the book. I really want to read it. Again, it was one of those books that I've not been that bothered to read because it hasn't really seemed like my thing. But then because so many people were raving about the film, I was like, right, I really need to watch this, especially because it's a young adult adaptation and it's my thing. Like, I really need to watch it, and it's just so good. It's just so cute and like easy to watch. And I know some people have already said that they've rewatched it like 4 times.
Really?
Because it's just they just love it. So it's one of those films that you don't need to concentrate on at all. You can just kind of stick it on a Sunday and and just chill, and it's just
Ah.
but it's just such a nice film, and there's nothing like too hard to watch. Like, it's just so lighthearted, and I loved it.
Oh, I know what I'm doing after this podcast now.
Yes.
I know exactly what I'm doing.
Good.
Oh no, it's been on my to watch list for ages, and again, it was sort. I don't know whether it's the trailer of it or whatever, but it sort of seemed pitched a bit younger than what I'd usually watch.
That's what I thought.
But I've heard so many good things about it, and always got to give something a go at least once. Oh no, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear, because I didn't want to miss out just in case it was too young.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, should we give stuff like that an age basis? It's like, can 4-year-olds not enjoy it, or could 10-year-olds not enjoy it? Yeah, sometimes people feel bad about watching stuff that's young, that's considered too young for them, and it's like, well, if you enjoy it, does it matter what age it's aimed at?
Exactly. Me and my sister, we're both twins. We are both twins, like only one of us could be a twin.
A twin, but not the other one. No, just me.
We are twins, and we live together.
Yeah.
And our watch list is like SpongeBob, and we have been known to sit there and like watch Peppa Pig for an hour.
Oh, Peppa
and just
Pig.
Be like, what are we doing with our lives?
Oh, you're allowed. It's fine. And who doesn't love the SpongeBob theme song at the beginning? I don't know if I'm allowed to sing it. I really want to sing it now.
Please do.
No, we'll probably get told off by like the people who make SpongeBob. It's like, you can't do that.
Copyright claim.
Copyright.
Yeah.
Spoil our fun.
But yeah, so I definitely agree that things shouldn't have an age.
No, exactly.
Obviously, I mean, an upwards age, sure.
Yeah,
I mean, like a minimum age. Like, you can't watch. I can't imagine like a 10-year-old watching Gone Girl.
No.
And like seeing Neil Patrick Harris just get his throat slit.
To be honest, I was like early 20s when I watched that, and even I was a bit like, oh Neil, oh no, avert your eyes.
Yeah, he's a treasure. We can't watch him get his throat slit.
Or be naked on the bed. That was a bit sort of sudden, and oh my god, I saw everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, they're definitely an upwards age, but a downwards age. I can see, yes, definitely.
I just thought of this because we were talking about Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
Have you seen A Series of Unfortunate Events on Netflix?
Now, this is the thing. I was a really big fan of the book series when I grew up.
Yeah.
And I've watched the movie with Jim Carrey. I have not watched the TV show yet with Neil Patrick Harris.
Right.
What's it like?
I love it. I think I really like how instead of the film was a bit rushed because they
threw like 3 books.
Yeah, it was like the first 3 books into an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But with the TV, like the Netflix show, each book gets 2 episodes.
Ooh.
And each episode is nearly an hour long, I think.
Oh wow! So they really
so they can
pacing out.
Exactly, yeah. They kind of explore every book in depth, and they don't miss anything out. It's amazing. And like it's so much darker. And Neil Patrick Harris is just creepy as heck.
And considering those books are pretty dark to begin with, especially for children's books.
Yeah.
That's saying something.
So that's another thing that you need to go and watch.
My ad list is just going to be atrocious by the time this finishes. That's really good to know, actually, because one of my pet peeves, and I don't know if you find this as well, tends to only happen with movies. When they take important either characters or plot lines out of the book that they're getting the movie script from due to time constraints, and then they add their own stuff in. It's like, oh my God. Hang on a sec, buddy. If you didn't have time for the other stuff, why are you adding your new stuff? That's not on. Stick to the script.
The one thing I always think of when I think of bad adaptations. Have you seen all the Divergent films?
No, I couldn't sit through them.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
They hurt to watch.
Yeah, so the first film I kind of enjoyed.
That was all right.
It wasn't too bad. They still kind of messed a couple of things up, but it wasn't too bad. From there, it just goes downhill. The final film, again, spoiler warning to anyone who hasn't read Allegiant.
You need like a klaxon here, like no.
Yeah. Have you read Allegiant?
Yes, I have.
Right, so you know how it ends.
Yes, I do. I do. I very much know how this ends.
The film absolutely ruined it.
What?
Now, the end of Allegiant for me is like one of my favourite endings for a series.
Because you don't see it coming.
Going back to our talk about shocks, that is one of the biggest shocks I think I've read.
I can't remember the last time. Are we going to really spoil it here?
Yes, that's fine. They came out years ago. If someone hasn't read it by now, then they need to get on it.
You just never, it's very rare you see a book series, and especially in that genre, where the main character dies.
Yes, exactly.
What? And I'm the same as you. I got to that bit. I had to flick back and go like, no, I must have read that wrong.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no, I read that. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. Now, in the film, I was so excited to go and see this film because I wanted to kind of see the reactions of people around me who haven't read it, or I just wanted to see how they did it, because it was so well written in the book that I could sit there and I could picture how it would look in the film.
Oh, definitely.
That was definitely not the case.
Oh, no.
She doesn't die in the last film.
What?
No, she doesn't die. I can't remember his name, the main villain in the book.
Thingamabob, yeah. No, I can't remember.
Yeah. He kind of just pops up again at the end.
Oh.
And it ends with her just standing on a building, just kind of looking pensively into the distance, with him just standing there behind her. And that's it. That's the ending to all the films. And they took out probably half of the book, replaced it with so much, I don't even know, just stuff that wasn't needed, and then completely ruined the ending.
How? What? They had a source material to work with. How do you mess that up?
I don't know. And I went to see it with my sister, and we sat in the cinema while the end credits rolled. We sat in complete silence. We didn't say a word for probably at least 5 minutes while the credits were rolling. And we just, when the lights came up, we just looked at each other in disbelief. Like, what the hell was that?
How can they get that so epically wrong?
As we walked back to her house, we were just ranting about it the entire way.
Understandably so.
So when we were just saying about adaptations, I have never seen, I don't think I've ever seen a worse adaptation of anything.
No. No, and like Vampire Diaries was pretty bad, but that's awful. I mean, that's one of the best endings to a book series I've ever come across.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that completely like 180s how you think a book series like that would finish.
Yeah.
And had the possibility to have one of the greatest endings
in
a YA franchise book to movie adaptation, and they didn't do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Were they scared? Was it like, no,
I don't know.
Killing the main character is too much for Hollywood. We can't possibly do
Yeah. To make it even worse, I think they wanted to make another film.
Oh, was it going to be like one of those, like split the last book into 2 endings?
I think it was, yeah. But I was really confused because I Googled it as soon as we left the cinema and found out that they were going to make a new, it was like called Resurgent or something, I can't remember.
Okay.
And but I was really confused because they didn't have any more plot from the book to include in another film, so they were basically going to make something up for another film. The film then completely failed, and I don't think they got the funding for it, and then they were going to turn it into a TV movie. And then all of the cast just dropped out. So, like, I think Miles Teller was one of the first people to just drop out, and then Shailene Woodley was like, no, I'm not doing that, and dropped out.
Understandably so. It's like you get attached to the character you're playing, and presumably the actors must have read, or certainly some of the actors must have read some of the book series.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why they drop out. Like, if they messed it up that bad, I wouldn't want to be part of that anymore either.
Exactly.
Because that was doing so well. Like, from what I heard, like, certainly the first movie, I came away from it going, actually, that was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard bad things about the second movie. I was like, no, I don't want to ruin my experience anymore.
Yeah.
And Oh no, I can understand why you guys were ranting all the way home.
Yeah.
It's atrocious. If you have a source material of a very successful book that you're working with, maybe you should stick to the plot
Yeah,
point.
use it.
Yeah, it's there. Why would you change it?
Like, I'm a little bit worried because they're turning some of Neil Chesterman's books into adaptations. Like, they're adapting them into, I think, Unwind, I think they're turning into a TV show, and then Scythe and
Ooh.
Thunderhead, I think they're going to be turning into films. And Scythe and Thunderhead are massive at the moment. Like, they're all over Twitter and they're all over people's blogs.
Ooh.
And I think they're turning them into films. And I adore them, so I'm kind of terrified. I'm excited, but terrified.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
These things they really can go down one street or the other. They will either do fantastically or they completely bomb and then they're never heard of again.
Yeah. What books do you think would be good adaptations?
See, this is kind of, for me, I always really enjoyed the Vampire Academy series. Now, they've already turned it into a movie.
Right.
And the movie did really badly. But I've always wanted to see it as a TV show. So I'd definitely be interested to see how that one would work out. And then another one was a book series I read when I was like more sort of like 10, 11, 12. So it's not quite YA. Have you ever heard of the Ali's World series?
Yes, I loved those.
Hey, Ali's World fan!
I was obsessed with them. I tried to write my own version.
What, like fan fiction before it was fan
Well,
fiction?
yeah, I guess. I tried, I can't remember what I called it. But yeah, I tried to write my own version, and I really I had this book that was kind of like, it had pictures of their bedrooms, and it had like, it was all their diary entries and stuff. I can't remember what it was now, but I'm pretty sure that was a thing. I'm sure I'm not making it up. And I would try and copy it all, and I would try and like write my own adventure series that was based on the Ali's World books. So
no, I think there was something like that. There was like almost like an anthology or something, because those
yeah,
were like 15, 16 books.
Yeah.
Plus a Christmas special book that they brought out.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to see that as a TV show. I thought it
Oh,
would be
man,
like
yeah.
almost like Tracy Beaker style.
That's just what I thought of, actually, was Tracy Beaker. We're on the same wavelength here.
I know, see, we're talking to the right people here.
Yeah.
But I was obsessed with Ali's World. I always wanted to be her sister Rowan.
Yes.
Like the really artsy one who was had the Johnny Depp shrine on her wall, which is when I was growing up. I had a Johnny Depp shrine on my wall.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be sort of like that type of person growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so enjoyable because it wasn't really anything to do with love stories or anything. It was just a family dynamic. A really crazy family dynamic with 1,000,001 pets. How they managed to afford a place sort of just outside London with that many pets on their dad's, what was he fixed bikes, was it?
I think so.
Wage.
Yeah.
And it's like, part of me was like, how? And the other part of me was like, I want that life.
I'm thinking of starting a new series on my blog where I kind of look back at childhood series that I loved.
That would be so cool.
I didn't even consider Ali's World. I completely forgot about that until you just mentioned it. So I think I might include that in the series. You
should. They were an incredible set of books. Like just her going about her 13-year-old life at school and her because it was quite progressive in its own way. Like if you think back to her group of friends, it was a very sort of like dynamic group of girls from all walks of life and all diversities, and then it was brilliant. It
almost reminds me of like a younger version of the Georgia Nicholson books.
Incredible set of books.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I can almost imagine the Georgia Nicholson books as being an older version of Ali's World.
Yeah, with the friend dynamic and the crazy family and the crazy pets. And I can see that. I can see where you're coming from with that.
Oh, I've just thought that is the Georgia books.
Yeah.
That's another example for me of an adaptation that didn't work very well.
Oh, I know. And again, it had such promise.
Yeah. The film was all right. It's still fun. Like, I still have the DVD and it was still fun.
Yeah.
But again, they tried to pack several books into one film.
And it never works.
And then write their own material for it.
Yeah, it never works. And they never seem to learn when they do that.
No.
But, oh God, because that was Aaron Taylor Johnson's first foray into acting.
God, yeah.
Oh my word. And Alan Davis was in it randomly as the dad.
Yes.
One of my favourite comedians, and he's the dad in it. And
yeah.
No, that had
that was another series that I loved just because of, like you said, where Ali's world was quite progressive.
Yes.
That was too, where like she had a lesbian friend and like they would just constantly talk about, like I remember in one of the books they're having a discussion at a sleepover about like how lesbians have sex. And it's like, this is so good to have in a teenage series because it's like an older teenage series.
Yeah, and people have those discussions sometimes. Like, I don't know, like certainly when I went to sleepovers and stuff, the discussion topics that we ran through went from the sublime to the ridiculous, and there seemed to be a very, although like a bit OTT in certain respects, quite a realistic depiction of the types of conversations girls had, and in their girl groups, and the type of stuff they used to get up to at school, like the changing the uniform before you get to school, like after leaving the house, and stuff like that we used to do and get away with, or not get away with, as the case may be, and the silly things we used to do to our hair or our face to either fit in or like that. And the fact that the main character also was not, in my mind, she was never conventionally attractive, because that was always her mate Jazz, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who was the more although she had an obsession with owls. She was always the more conventionally attractive, and Georgia was always like, I've got a big nose and I've got like mousy brown hair, and I was like, yes, I am you. I am that girl.
That's another thing that they didn't do very well in the film, was Jazz. I was so sad because I love Jazz in the books, and Jazz in the film, they made her out to be this like kind of girly girl who doesn't want to get her hands dirty. Like she would complain like, I don't want to do that, that's disgusting. But Jazz in the books would go on like forest retreats.
She'd go foraging, wouldn't she, with her boyfriend, and they go camping, and she liked owls, and she swears she was like a glasses wearing Twitcher almost. She sort of turned into, and that's definitely not the Jazz in the series. Ellen was quite accurate though.
Oh yes, I loved her, and Rosie.
Yes, Rosie, and her was it Swedish boyfriend Sven?
Yeah,
they should have had more Sven in that show.
Oh man, yeah,
awesome.
One person that I would love to see in the adaptation is Massimo.
Oh yeah, because they never got to Massimo, did they?
The Italian stallion.
The Italian stallion and his moped. Bellissima.
Yeah, that's another one that I think would work as a TV show.
Yes, very definitely. Again, sort of older Tracy Beaker-esque.
Yeah.
Like when they did the new series in Tracy Beaker where she was older and actually working at the children's home as opposed to being in the children's home. It definitely sort of catered to that type of market. See, why do they insist on turning things into films when they very clearly should be TV shows? I think they do so much better.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly have more of they'd have more time to develop the storylines and make you sort of like sympathise with the characters. But no, they try and smash it all into a 2-hour movie and then wonder why it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to get a copy of Ali's World though, just for the throwback.
You should. I think it's the one series that I actually kept sort of all the way growing up. Like, sometimes you get rid of books that you've outgrown and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ali's World has stayed.
I think most of mine, as a kid, I think I got most of mine from the library. So like I would finish one and then my mum would take me back to the library and I would get the next one or like the next couple. So I don't think I've ever owned them. I only read them from the library.
You're going to have to get a copy for your own.
I will, yeah. And I bet they're really cheap now, like on eBay or something.
Oh, I bet you could get like a box set of the entire lot for like, 20 quid? Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see that turned into some sort of, it's like CBBC. I reckon it would do very well on CBBC.
Yeah, definitely.
But hey, you never know. Maybe if the writer of the books is still around, maybe she'll hear this podcast and she'll be like, those are the girls that I can use.
Yeah. We can write the script.
Hell yeah, I would totally write that script.
Yeah. Well, people are selling groups of them for like a few quid.
Well, there you go.
Someone's selling 6 for $6.99. Nice.
Whoa.
That's what I'm going to do when we finish here.
Yeah, I'll watch To All the Boys I Loved Before. You get yourself the Ali
Yes.
Pally books, and we'll have a grand old Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. I already spent £32 on books yesterday, but, you know, I can spend more.
Of course, there's no limit. No limit to how much you can spend on books.
Yeah, well, I got Patrick Ness's new book, and it's so beautiful. And I was kind of I was so envious of people posting pictures of theirs, so I had to go and buy it. And then I also bought a couple of graphic novels for this blog hop that we're going to be doing.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to this blog hop. My psychological thrillers came through the door this morning, so I'm very much looking forward to opening those up. We've got a nice little group going for that at the moment, haven't we?
We have, yeah. There's about 6 of us.
Excellent.
By the time this episode goes out, those blog posts will be up.
They will be. So anyone who's listening out there should come and have a read of all our blog hops.
I will put all the links in the notes.
In the
so anyone listening, look in the notes, anyone listening, and go and read all of our blog posts. See what I thought of my graphic novels that I just bought yesterday.
See what I thought
the power of time travel. And yeah, so go and do that.
And maybe it'll inspire people to sort of branch out on their own. And
I hope so.
Yeah, because sort of in a very circular, going back to the beginning of our discussion, people get stuck in like the same type of books that they like to read. So maybe it will encourage people to venture out and try something a little bit different. And
I hope so.
If it doesn't work for them, then that's fine. But if it does work for them, then they're going to be spending a lot more money at the bookstore.
That's the problem, yeah. Well, that was a nice way to end, circling right back to the beginning.
It's magical when that happens.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
That's okay. It was nice talking to you.
And you as well. I'm going to go have to find my Ali Pally books now.
Yes, me too.
They're in the attic somewhere.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. You can find all of the information from this episode, including all of the things that we talked about and a little bit about today's guest, in the show notes, and they'll be at wonderfullybookish.co.uk/podcast. You can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and the links for those will also be in the show notes. And finally, if you want to chat or you've just got a burning question you want to ask about this episode or any of the others, you can pop me an email at podcast@wonderfullybookish.co.uk. See you next time.